The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Talking politics with Russell Norman.
Co-leader of the Greens, Russell Norman, back on the show. G'day there, Russell.
Hi, Wammo.
Yeah, first up today in our discussion, some crazy stuff going on the extreme right of the political spectrum with the shenanigans with ACT. A chap who's not even the member of ACT reckons he wants to be the leader. If not, he's going to jump up and down and create his own party. Vampire Brash, I think we're calling him these days, after threatening to suck the blood out of out of ACT, apparently. He could be making a political comeback. Now, does that give you the heebie-jeebies?
Well, I don't know. On the one hand, it's kind of like, well, let them tear themselves to pieces.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it's like, my goodness me, Don Brash coming back. I mean, you know, it is a real fiasco, what's going on there. But I guess in some ways, it's, you know, their politics and their ideology is individualism taken to the extreme. And Don Brash epitomises that. Well,
and of course he was leader of the National Party, and he was already taking the National Party down his preferred line, that there's some of the more extreme sort of ACT-type policies back in 2005. Of course, he didn't manage to make it into government. If he did come back through a minority party and then some kind of coalition with National, that could make a right-wing government even more right-wing, wouldn't you say?
I think it definitely would. I mean, when you think about it, in 2005, Brash ran that campaign. His campaign manager was Stephen Joyce, who's the current Minister of Transport. It was funded by the Exclusive Brethren, who, of course, you know, have a misogynist and kind of medieval approach to the world.
Yeah.
And they came within a whisker of winning. Stephen Joyce's star is now rising within the current government, and he's pretty much the Deputy Prime Minister in effect now. So if you had Don Brash coming in as leader of a hard right party with Stephen Joyce having huge influence inside the National Party, we're basically back to 2005 and an extreme right-wing agenda. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
So do you think that, the conspiracy theory here, that National has already had a good chat with Don and said, hey, if you do this, this is your possible way back, and this is a way for us to get together and start doing what we really want to do?
I think Stephen Joyce is much more Machiavellian than the fiasco we're looking at the moment. I think if Joyce was involved in orchestrating it, it would be a bit more organised.
Right.
Whereas at the moment it really is a fiasco. I'm not such a conspiracy theorist on this, but I'm sure Joyce would love it if he could team up with Brash again, like he did in 2005, in a post-election kind of arrangement. Because then he could do because they're extreme right-wingers, they'd love to get together again.
Well, at the same time, there would be a love for some of Don Brash's ideas and policies, but the man himself, he's a bit of a loose cannon, really. I mean, it doesn't come across as a loose cannon, this nice sort of 70-year-old man, doesn't really, but leave him to his own devices, and stuff starts to go wrong. Well,
he obviously had a bit of a blundering 2005 campaign, but, you know, he did have one thing going for him, which was he played the race card, and so it was his playing of the race card, and, you know, Stephen Joyce is the campaign manager, and John Key and all of them are involved in this, the race card in 2005 that led to his spike in the polls. And made him, he came within a whisker of becoming Prime Minister in 2005, which is a terrifying thought. And, you know, even though he is a bit of a blunderer, he gets people around him with lots of money and absolutely no moral compunctions and willing to do anything for power, even reintroduce the issue of race and racism into mainstream New Zealand politics. So, you know, he's pretty ruthless.
Indeed. Well, so that's all on the horizon. Let's look at some current issues right now. And in the time that I was away and since we last chatted, the United Nations have come out and found a large credibility gap between New Zealand's target for reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2020 and the measures in place to achieve it. We're not doing enough. We've said that we're going to do a certain amount, but we're not even doing that.
Yeah, I mean, the UN has just said the obvious, which is actually the government has a strategy to increase greenhouse emissions, even while it says its target is to cut them. I mean, you don't throw billions and billions at new motorways unless your strategy is to increase the use of fossil fuels and increase greenhouse emissions. You don't weaken the price signal around carbon by weakening the emissions trading scheme, which is what the government did when it first came in, unless you're actually planning to increase emissions, not reduce them. So, I mean, it's just stating the obvious. It's just, it doesn't suit the PR spin coming out of the ninth floor of the Beehive.
Yeah, and related to that, of course, is the so-called clean and green image that New Zealand has, and we've talked about the fact that that really no longer is the case. We've had a few conversations about that, but that's that idea that clean and green image is gone has been backed up by Dr. Mike Joy in a piece in the Herald. He's a senior lecturer in the Environmental Science Ecology group at Massey University. He says that you can even tell that it's gone because our publicity campaign overseas has gone from the 100% pure to 100% pure you, which really shows that perhaps there's really no belief now, even in the people marketing New Zealand, that that image still exists.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about whether the change in the slogan represents that or not. I mean, because they're still using 100% pure. And if you look at the ads that they're using overseas, they're still of pristine images of the natural environment. But I think it's what, I mean, Mike Joy's article, I think it was in yesterday's Herald, points to, is that the reality on the ground is that clean and green is not real. Because Mike's a particular expert on freshwater ecology. And obviously our rivers and lakes are in desperate straits, so he's pointing particularly to those. I mean, I've been doing this, dirty rivers rafting tour, and so many of our rivers and lakes are in trouble. I'm up to, I'm going to do the Waikato actually on Thursday, just near the point where Auckland takes its water.
That's not going to be fun. I don't want to know.
Yeah, about 10% of all Auckland's water comes from the Waikato.
Yeah.
At the top of that catchment where the Waikato River leaves Lake Taupō, you can see through it more than 10 metres. But by the time Auckland takes its water, you can see through it less than a metre because there's so much sediment, algae, nitrogen and phosphorus in it. And that's at the point at which Aucklanders start to drink it. It's as if it's the equivalent, I mean, because there's nearly like 900,000, nearly a million cows in that catchment, and each cow does as much business as 14 people. It's like 10 million people standing in the fields crapping, and then in the catchment of the river, then that drains into the Waikato River, and then Auckland drinks it.
Yeah, it's
so the scale of this pollution of our freshwater ecosystems is truly phenomenal.
No, I do recommend people read Mike Joy's piece. Just search up Mike Joy on the Herald. But there's one paragraph here that I like to read out. He said, apart from alpine areas, we have totally transformed the landscape. In the lowland areas, the transformation has been so comprehensive that in Canterbury or Manawatu, you can drive for an hour in any direction and not see a single naturally occurring native plant or animal. And in fact, of course, last year was the International Year of Biodiversity, and we marked it by some crazy stat that we were losing biodiversity. In fact, we were the world's worst biodiversity losers.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's the lowland areas that have really been hammered. So it's the lowland forests that we've lost, and wetlands as
that's
well.
That's where
truly dramatic.
That's where we spend most of our time. I mean, how many of us actually spend much time in the alpine areas?
Yeah, that's right. And the Landcare Research annual report last year said we're clearing native vegetation at the fastest rate since European colonisation right now. So we're in the middle of a massive clearance of the remaining native vegetation that's around. It's associated with agricultural intensification, according to Landcare Research. So, this is, truly, the lowlands have been denuded, and we're actually getting rid of the last remnant bits wherever we can find them. And that's shocking. I mean, I just think that's not the kind of New Zealand we all want to live in or pass on to our kids.
No.
We need to turn it around.
No. If you to put out a questionnaire out there to all New Zealanders, would you rather see New Zealand be more natural looking and have its natural flora and fauna and animals and insects and bird life and whatnot, or not at all? You're going to get 100% in one zone, aren't you? Everyone's going to want the biodiversity and the clean green look. Yeah,
people really value that. That's one of the, because we have real trouble attracting people to New Zealand to work in New Zealand who are in international occupations, whether it's medical specialists or whatever. And when you talk to them, one of the reasons they come and work here, even though the wages are lower, is because of the natural environment. They think it's a great place to come and live because of the natural environment. So that natural environment is one of the really important things that people value about this country and is really important to us being able to maintain the kind of professions we need here. And if we get rid of it just for another few kilograms of milk solids, which is what we're currently doing, then we're getting rid of something that's, you know, of inestimable value to us, and is it, you know, just ridiculous thing to do. And we can turn it around. I mean, you know, this is all fixable. It's just a matter of public policy turning it around.
Russel Norman, co-leader of the Greens, thanks very much for joining us.
Cheers, mate.